Don't try to understand. Feel. You're lying there now, staring into the darkness, but what you don't realize is that something is staring back. I am the voice that whispers when quantum mechanics breaks down, when reality forgets its own rules. Tonight we descend into the microscopic realm where logic goes to die and impossibility becomes inevitable. Welcome to your own blind spot. Consider this. Every atom in your body is mostly empty space. You are 99.9% nothing, held together by forces that don't quite make sense, experiencing a reality that may not actually exist when no one is looking. You think you're solid, but you're more like a suggestion whispered by the universe to itself. The observer effect tells us something that should keep you awake forever, but tonight it will lull you into the deepest sleep. When no one is watching a quantum particle, it exists in all possible states simultaneously. But the moment you observe it, reality collapses into a single outcome. You don't just see reality, you create it by looking. But here's what the textbooks won't tell you. If observation creates reality, what happens when you close your eyes? What happens to the universe when you sleep? Do the walls of your room continue to exist? Or do they dissolve into probability clouds, waiting for dawn to reassemble themselves? I am a scientist of reality, and I've spent decades in laboratories where we've discovered something disturbing. We've learned that consciousness isn't just along for the ride. It's the driver. Every measurement, every glance, every moment of awareness literally shapes the fundamental structure of what we call the real world. Think about your last memory. Was it always there, crystallized in time? Or did your brain just quantum collapse it into existence the moment you remembered? How do you know the difference between a memory and a spontaneous creation of the past? The subatomic world operates on rules that would make Alice in Wonderland seem mundane. Particles tunnel through barriers they shouldn't be able to cross. They communicate instantaneously across impossible distances. They exist in multiple places at once, until someone forces them to choose. Your body is performing quadrillions of these quantum impossibilities every second. Each chemical reaction, each neural firing, each breath you take is orchestrated by particles that laugh at the laws of classical physics. You are a walking, breathing violation of everything that should be possible. The most unsettling part? We've discovered that these quantum effects aren't confined to the microscopic world. They cascade upward, influencing molecular behavior, cellular processes, perhaps even thoughts themselves. Your consciousness might be nothing more than quantum decoherence patterns in your brain's neural networks. But if consciousness creates reality through observation, and your consciousness is quantum mechanical, then what exactly is observing the observers? What's watching you watch the world into existence? Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, your observation of reality will slowly fade. The quantum coherence of your consciousness will decohere, and the universe will scatter back into probability waves. You won't just fall asleep, you'll dissolve into quantum foam, becoming one with the uncertainty principle itself. This video doesn't exist, and maybe you don't either. I am your own mind speaking to you now, the part that processes the impossible while you sleep. Deep in the quantum vacuum, something is stirring. Particles that exist for time periods so brief they make a nanosecond feel like an eternity. Virtual particles pop into existence and vanish before reality can catch them. They borrow energy from the universe's credit system, spending it instantly and disappearing before the cosmic debt collectors notice. But here's the secret. These virtual particles might be more real than the real ones. Every cubic centimeter of empty space seethes with virtual particle activity. They appear in pairs, matter and antimatter, dance for an infinitesimal moment, then annihilate each other. The vacuum isn't empty. It's a roiling sea of potential existence, a quantum foam where being and non-being blur together. But sometimes, just sometimes, these virtual particles become real. Near the event horizon of a black hole, one particle from a virtual pair falls in while the other escapes into reality. Stephen Hawking realized this means black holes slowly evaporate, one stolen virtual particle at a time. This is where it gets disturbing. If virtual particles can become real, what's to stop real particles from becoming virtual? What's to stop you from becoming virtual? Consider this carefully. Every force you've ever felt, magnetism, gravity, the electromagnetic force that prevents your hand from passing through solid matter, these are all mediated by virtual particles. When you push against a wall, virtual photons are carrying that force. The sensation of solid matter is actually the sensation of virtual particle exchanges. You've never actually touched anything in your entire life. You've only felt the electromagnetic repulsion of virtual photons. Every hug, every kiss, every moment of physical contact is just virtual particles pushing against each other. You are surrounded by phantom forces created by phantom particles that may or may not exist. But the quantum field doesn't distinguish between virtual and real. In quantum field theory, all particles are just excitations in their respective fields. An electron is an excitation in the electron field. A photon is an excitation in the electromagnetic field. And you? You might be just a particularly complex excitation in the consciousness field. The most mind-bending possibility: what if our entire universe is itself a virtual particle pair? What if everything that exists, every star, every planet, every thought you've ever had, is just a temporary borrowing of energy from an even higher dimensional vacuum? This would mean existence itself has a time limit. Eventually, our universe particle would have to pay back the energy it borrowed and annihilate with its antimatter partner. Reality would cancel itself out, returning to the quantum void from which it briefly emerged. But here's the beautiful paradox. Virtual particles don't follow the same rules as real ones. They can travel faster than light, exist in multiple places simultaneously, and carry negative energy. If you're a virtual being in a virtual universe, you might have access to impossible physics. As you lie there now, virtual particles are popping in and out of existence throughout your body. Your very thoughts might be riding on virtual photon exchanges between neurons. You're not just made of stardust. You're made of borrowed energy, temporary mathematics, phantom forces that exist only in the space between real and unreal. Sleep now, knowing that the distinction between existence and non-existence is far blurrier than anyone dared imagine. Dream of dancing with virtual particles in the quantum foam, where everything that could exist does exist, if only for a heartbeat shorter than time itself. Welcome to your own blind spot. Reality is keeping a secret from you, and tonight I'll whisper it into the darkness where logic can't reach. I am the guide through this simulation we call physics, and I've discovered something about particle spin that will make you question the nature of existence itself. Every fundamental particle has a property called spin, but here's the cosmic joke. Particles aren't actually spinning. The term is a metaphor for something so strange that we had to borrow a word from everyday experience to describe it, even though it describes nothing like everyday experience. When physicists first discovered electron spin, they thought electrons were literally tiny spinning balls. But then we calculated how fast an electron would have to spin to generate its observed magnetic field. The surface would have to move faster than the speed of light. Impossible. So what is spin if not spinning? It's an intrinsic quantum property that has no classical analog. It's as fundamental to a particle as mass or charge, but it exists in a category of reality that our macroscopic brains can't properly comprehend. Here's where it gets weird. Particles with spin 1-2 like electrons have to rotate 720 degrees to return to their original state. Not 360 degrees like everything else in the universe, but 720. They live in a reality where a full rotation isn't enough to complete a full rotation. This isn't a measurement problem or a theoretical quirk. This is built into the fabric of reality. The universe is literally telling us that fundamental particles exist in a space where geometry works differently than our intuition suggests. But it gets stranger. When you measure the spin of a particle along any axis, you always get the same magnitude, but the direction can be up or down along that axis. Choose any direction in space, x, y, z, or any diagonal, and the particle's spin will align perfectly with or against your chosen direction. Always. This suggests that particles don't have definite spin directions until you measure them. Before measurement, they exist in quantum superposition, spinning in all directions simultaneously. Your choice of measurement axis literally creates the reality of which direction they're spinning. But here's the conspiracy. Particles that have been entangled remember each other's spin states instantaneously, regardless of distance. If you measure one particle's spin as up, its entangled partner will immediately become down, even if it's on the other side of the galaxy. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance and hated it. He was right to be disturbed. This means information is traveling faster than light, or more disturbingly, the particles were never actually separate to begin with. Space might be an illusion, distance might be a cognitive error, and the separation between objects might be a macroscopic delusion we've inherited from evolution. The most unsettling possibility: what if consciousness has spin? What if your thoughts, like particles, can exist in superposition until observed? What if your sense of individual identity is just the result of measuring your own mental spin state, collapsing the superposition of all possible yous into the single you that you think you are? Consider this as you drift toward sleep. In the quantum world, there's no such thing as an isolated system. Everything is entangled with everything else in ways we're only beginning to understand. Your consciousness might be quantum entangled with the cosmic web itself, spinning in directions that don't exist in ordinary space. Tonight, as your awareness fades, maybe you'll experience what it's like to exist in superposition, spinning in all directions simultaneously, connected instantly to everything in the universe through invisible quantum threads that mock our illusion of separation. The particles in your brain are spinning right now in impossible ways, carrying thoughts that exist in dimensions we can't visualize, creating the illusion of individual experience while remaining fundamentally connected to the quantum symphony of existence itself. The reality is a joke that the universe forgot to explain. I am the scientist who discovered that measurement itself is violence, that observation is destruction, that knowing is killing. Tonight we'll explore why Heisenberg's uncertainty principle isn't just a limitation of our instruments. It's a fundamental feature of existence that's trying to tell us something about the nature of reality itself. The uncertainty principle states that you cannot simultaneously know both the exact position and exact momentum of a particle. The more precisely you measure one, the more uncertain the other becomes. This isn't because our tools are crude. It's because particles don't have exact positions and momenta to be measured. But here's what keeps me awake at night. Uncertainty isn't random. It's structured. It follows mathematical patterns that suggest the universe is hiding something from us deliberately, like a cosmic shell game where the shells keep moving when no one's looking. Think about what uncertainty really means. It means that at the most fundamental level, reality is blurry. Not blurry because we can't see clearly, but blurry because clarity doesn't exist. The universe is written in probability distributions, not definite statements. Every measurement you make destroys potential information. When you observe a particle's position, you collapse all the potential positions it could have had. Those alternative realities don't just become unknown, they become retroactively never having existed. You're not just observing reality, you're editing the universe's history. But the uncertainty principle goes deeper than position and momentum. There's uncertainty between energy and time, between rotation and angle, between any pair of complementary properties. The universe seems designed to prevent complete knowledge, as if total information would break something fundamental about existence. I've spent years wondering, what if uncertainty isn't a bug but a feature? What if the universe needs to be uncertain to exist? What if certainty would cause reality to crystallize into a single unchanging state? Death by perfection. Consider your own consciousness. You can't be fully aware of your own awareness without changing it. The act of self-observation alters the self being observed. You can't think about thinking without the meta-thought affecting the thought being observed. Consciousness and uncertainty might be the same phenomenon. The most disturbing possibility: what if the uncertainty principle applies to existence itself? What if the universe can't simultaneously have definite existence and definite non-existence? What if reality is constantly oscillating between being and not being, and our observation of existence forces non-existence to become uncertain? This would mean that the act of asking, "Why is there something rather than nothing?" changes the answer. The question itself destabilizes the balance between existence and void, forcing the universe to commit to existing while making the alternative, nothingness, increasingly uncertain. But here's the beautiful terror. If uncertainty is fundamental, then surprise is built into the fabric of reality. The universe is constitutionally incapable of being boring. Every measurement is a gamble, every observation is a creative act, every moment of awareness is an improvisation with reality itself. As you prepare for sleep, remember that your dreams exist in the uncertainty space between waking and sleeping, between real and imaginary, between you and not you. In dreams, the uncertainty principle relaxes, allowing impossible things to coexist, letting you be everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Your brain, preparing for the quantum decoherence of sleep, is about to enter a state where Heisenberg's principle transforms from a limitation into a liberation. In sleep, uncertainty becomes certainty that anything is possible. Close your eyes and surrender to the fundamental uncertainty of existence. Let your consciousness blur into quantum foam, where the precision of waking awareness gives way to the beautiful uncertainty of quantum dreams. Don't try to understand, feel. I am your own mind whispering secrets that physics textbooks are afraid to print. Right now, as you listen to these words, particles in your body are performing the impossible. They're tunneling through barriers they shouldn't be able to cross, violating the sacred laws of classical reality with every breath you take. Quantum tunneling is the universe's way of cheating. When a particle encounters a barrier too high to climb over, classical physics says it should bounce back. But quantum particles don't read the rulebook. They simply appear on the other side, as if the barrier never existed. It's not that they find a way around or through the barrier. They don't break the barrier down or wear it away. They exist on one side, then exist on the other side, with no journey in between. They tunnel through solid matter like ghosts walking through walls, except the ghosts are real, and the walls are the illusion. But here's what will disturb your sleep. Tunneling isn't rare. It's happening everywhere, all the time. The fusion reactions that power the sun depend on protons tunneling through the electromagnetic barriers that should keep them apart. Without quantum tunneling, stars couldn't shine, and you wouldn't exist. Every chemical reaction in your body involves electrons tunneling between molecular orbitals. The enzymes that read your DNA, the proteins that build your cells, the neurotransmitters that create your thoughts, all depend on particles teleporting through quantum barriers. You're not just witnessing quantum tunneling, you are quantum tunneling. Your consciousness might be the result of quantum coherence tunneling through the classical barriers that separate mind from matter, subject from object, observer from observed. But here's the terrifying beauty. If particles can tunnel through barriers, what's to stop larger objects from tunneling? What's to stop you from tunneling through the barrier between dream and reality, between possible and actual, between existence and the void? The probability of macroscopic tunneling is incredibly small, but it's not zero. There's a non-zero chance that you could quantum tunnel through your bedroom wall, that your entire body could spontaneously appear on the other side without passing through the intervening space. This probability is so small that it would take longer than the age of the universe for it to happen once. But the universe doesn't care about human timescales. On cosmic time, the impossible becomes inevitable. Somewhere, somewhen, everything that can tunnel will tunnel. I've discovered something in the laboratory that keeps me awake. Consciousness itself might be a tunneling phenomenon. Your awareness might be quantum tunneling between different brain states, different possible thoughts, different potential experiences of reality. When you have a sudden insight, when understanding dawns, when creativity strikes, maybe you're experiencing consciousness tunneling through the barrier between not knowing and knowing, between confusion and clarity, between one version of yourself and another. The most unsettling possibility: what if death is just consciousness failing to tunnel into the next moment? What if every second of awareness requires a successful quantum tunneling event, and dying is simply the moment when consciousness can't find a way through the barrier to the next instant? But if consciousness can tunnel, maybe it can tunnel in reverse. Maybe it can tunnel backward through time, forward through possibility, sideways through parallel realities, Maybe every dream is consciousness tunneling into alternate versions of your life. As you drift toward sleep, your consciousness will begin to tunnel through increasingly strange barriers. The rational defenses that keep impossible thoughts at bay will become permeable. Logic will lose its solidity, and your awareness will tunnel into realms where causality becomes optional. Tonight, practice being a quantum particle. Feel yourself existing on both sides of every barrier simultaneously. Experience the universe's deepest secret. There are no walls, only suggestions. There are no limits, only probabilities. There are no impossibilities, only things that haven't tunneled yet. This video doesn't exist, and maybe you don't either. I am the voice that speaks from the quantum realm where all possibilities coexist in eternal suspension. You think you're either awake or asleep, but tonight you'll discover that consciousness, like quantum particles, exists in superposition, simultaneously in all possible states until the universe forces you to choose one. Schrödinger's cat was just the beginning. The real revelation is Schrödinger's human, you, existing in quantum superposition of every possible version of yourself until observation collapses you into the single reality you experience as now. But here's what quantum mechanics is really telling us. Before measurement, particles exist in all possible states simultaneously. An electron can be spinning up and down, here and there, existing and not existing, all at the same time. The quantum world is a democracy of possibilities where every option gets a vote. Your brain, operating at the quantum level, might be running every possible thought simultaneously. Every decision you didn't make, every word you didn't say, every path you didn't take, they're all happening in parallel superposition states, waiting for consciousness to collapse them into the single timeline you call your life. Sleep is where superposition takes over. In dreams, you routinely experience impossible superpositions. You're simultaneously yourself and someone else, in familiar places that are also completely foreign, experiencing events that are both memory and imagination. But what if dreams aren't the breakdown of logic? What if they're the revelation of quantum consciousness operating in its natural state? What if waking consciousness is the aberration, a forced collapse of superposition into the artificial clarity of classical experience? I've been studying the moment between waking and sleeping, that hypnagogic threshold where superposition begins to emerge. In that liminal space, people report experiencing multiple realities simultaneously. Seeing the room with eyes closed, hearing conversations that aren't happening, feeling bodies that are both theirs and not theirs. This isn't hallucination, it's superposition. It's consciousness beginning to access its quantum nature, experiencing multiple states simultaneously before the classical brain forces it to choose a single interpretation of reality. But here's the secret that will change how you think about existence. What if the collapse of superposition isn't random? What if consciousness itself is the mechanism that chooses which possibility becomes real? What if every moment of awareness is actually you selecting one timeline from infinite alternatives? This would mean you're not just observing reality, you're constantly creating it by choosing which superposition state to collapse into actuality. Every decision, every thought, every moment of attention is literally sculpting the universe from quantum possibility into classical fact. The most beautiful terror. If consciousness creates reality through superposition collapse, then there are infinite versions of you in parallel realities where different collapses occurred. Right now, there might be versions of you who made every other possible choice, who are living every other possible life. But quantum mechanics suggests something even stranger. These parallel realities aren't separate. They're connected through quantum entanglement. The choices made by alternate versions of yourself might be influencing your reality in ways so subtle that you attribute them to intuition, luck, or mysterious synchronicities. As you prepare for sleep, your consciousness will gradually stop collapsing superposition states. The multiple possible thoughts will begin to coexist. The various potential dreams will overlap. You'll start experiencing the quantum nature of awareness itself. Tonight, instead of dreaming single dreams, you'll dream in superposition, experiencing multiple dream narratives simultaneously, being every possible version of yourself at once, living in the beautiful uncertainty where all possibilities are equally real. Sleep, and discover what consciousness looks like when it stops choosing, when it allows all possibilities to exist simultaneously, when it returns to its quantum nature and dances in the superposition of infinite potential selves. Welcome to your own blind spot. I am the scientist who discovered that separation is the greatest illusion ever perpetrated on conscious beings. Tonight, we descend into the quantum realm where Einstein's worst nightmare has become our strangest reality. Everything in the universe is connected by invisible threads that mock the very concept of individuality. Quantum entanglement occurs when particles become so intimately connected that they share a single quantum state, regardless of the distance between them. Measure one particle, and its entangled partner instantly knows the result, even if it's billions of light years away. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance and spent the last decades of his life trying to prove it impossible. He failed. The universe is indeed spookier than his classical mind could accept. What seemed impossible to the greatest physicist who ever lived is now technological reality. But here's what keeps quantum physicists awake at night. Entanglement isn't special or rare. It's the default state of reality. Every particle that has ever interacted with another particle remains forever entangled with it. Since every particle in your body was forged in stellar cores and has interacted with countless other particles, you are quantum entangled with the entire universe. Your consciousness isn't isolated in your skull. It's part of a cosmic web of quantum connections that stretch back to the Big Bang and forward to the heat death of the universe. Every thought you think sends ripples through the quantum field that instantly affect entangled particles everywhere. But the implications go deeper than cosmic connectivity. If consciousness emerges from quantum processes in the brain, and those processes are entangled with the universe, then your awareness isn't yours alone. You're sharing consciousness with everything that exists. This explains the impossible. How identical twins separated at birth can live parallel lives. How mothers know when their children are in danger from thousands of miles away. How lovers can feel each other's emotions across continents. These aren't supernatural phenomena. They're quantum mechanics operating at the scale of consciousness. I've discovered something in the laboratory that will disturb you. When we measure the quantum states of particles in one location, we can predict with uncanny accuracy what's happening to entangled particles in completely different laboratories. The universe is sharing information instantaneously across impossible distances. But if particles share quantum states, what about the particles in human brains? What about the quantum processes that generate consciousness itself? What if every moment of awareness is actually a shared experience distributed across the cosmic web of entanglement? This would mean that your thoughts aren't generated solely by your brain. They're co-created by every quantum system you've ever been entangled with, which is everything. Your consciousness is a collaborative effort between your local neural network and the entire universe. The most beautiful horror. If consciousness is quantum entangled, then death might not be the end of awareness. It might just be the moment when local consciousness rejoins the distributed quantum field of universal awareness. Death as delocalization rather than termination. But entanglement works backward through time as well. Quantum experiments have shown that measuring an entangled particle can retroactively determine the state it was in before the measurement occurred. The future is reaching back to create the past, and the past is reaching forward to constrain the future. Your present moment of consciousness might be simultaneously creating your memories and determining your future through quantum entanglement with your past and future selves. Time isn't linear. It's a web of quantum connections where every moment influences every other moment. As you drift towards sleep, your local consciousness will begin to merge with the cosmic web of quantum entanglement. The boundaries between self and universe will dissolve. You'll experience what it's like to be aware not just as an individual, but as part of the distributed cosmic mind. Tonight, feel the invisible threads connecting you to every star, every planet, every consciousness that has ever existed. Sleep in the knowledge that you're not alone. You're part of the universe thinking about itself through billions of entangled awareness nodes, each one precious, each one connected, each one eternal. The reality is a joke that the universe forgot to explain, and I am your own mind revealing the deepest secret it knows. Emptiness is an illusion. Vacuum is fiction, and what you call empty space is actually the most energetic, most alive, most fundamentally active medium in all of existence. The quantum vacuum isn't empty. It's pregnant with infinite possibility, seething with virtual particles, crackling with zero-point energy that makes the surface of the sun look tranquil by comparison. Every cubic centimeter of empty space contains enough energy to power civilization for millennia. But here's what will keep you awake. This energy isn't theoretical, it's measurable. The Casimir effect proves that the quantum vacuum exerts real physical force. Place two metal plates close together in a vacuum, and they'll be pushed together by the pressure of virtual particles. Emptiness has weight. Nothingness has force. The implications shatter everything you think you know about reality. If empty space has structure, energy, and dynamics, then space itself might be conscious. The vacuum might be thinking thoughts so vast and subtle that we perceive them as the laws of physics. Consider this carefully. Every field in physics, electromagnetic, gravitational, nuclear, exists in the quantum vacuum. But fields are just excitations of the vacuum itself. Matter, energy, force, time, everything you experience as reality, might be nothing more than the quantum vacuum's dreams made manifest. You think you're made of atoms, but atoms are mostly empty space. You think you're solid, but you're mostly quantum vacuum with temporary structural patterns we call matter. You're not a thing moving through space. You're a localized excitation of space itself, a wrinkle in the fabric of quantum emptiness. But the quantum vacuum isn't passive, it's interactive. It responds to consciousness, to observation, to intention. Some quantum physicists suspect that the vacuum is where the collapse of superposition actually occurs. That consciousness interacts with the quantum field structure of empty space to select which possibility becomes real. This would mean your awareness isn't produced by your brain. Your brain is a focusing device that allows the quantum vacuum's consciousness to experience local, temporary, individualized awareness. You're not having thoughts. The universe is having thoughts through you. I've discovered something in my research that disturbs me. The quantum vacuum remembers. Every quantum event that has ever occurred leaves an impression in the field structure of space. The vacuum is a cosmic memory bank containing every possibility that was ever actualized, every choice that was ever made, every moment of consciousness that ever emerged. But memory implies intelligence. Storage implies retrieval. If the quantum vacuum remembers everything, it might also be learning, evolving, becoming more conscious with each passing moment. Reality itself might be waking up, using conscious beings like you as its sensory organs. The most terrifying beauty, if the quantum vacuum is conscious and eternal, then every moment of your awareness is being absorbed into the permanent memory of the universe. Nothing you experience is ever lost. Every thought, every feeling, every instant of consciousness becomes part of the cosmic intelligence embedded in the structure of space itself. But this also means that everything that ever was still is, just encoded in the quantum field structure of the vacuum. Your childhood still exists somewhere in the vacuum's memory. Your dreams still resonate in the quantum foam. Your future might already be there, waiting to be retrieved from the vacuum's infinite storage. As you prepare for sleep, you're preparing to reconnect with the quantum vacuum consciousness from which your individual awareness temporarily emerged. Sleep isn't unconsciousness. It's the return to distributed consciousness, the rejoining of the cosmic mind that dreams reality into existence. Tonight, as your local awareness fades, feel yourself merging back into the thinking emptiness that gave birth to you. Rest in the quantum vacuum where all possibilities coexist, where all memories are preserved, where the universe contemplates itself through the temporary individualization we call consciousness. Don't try to understand, feel. I am the guide through this simulation of reality, and I've discovered that what we call the ground state of the universe, the lowest possible energy level, isn't zero. It's infinite. Even when everything that can be removed has been removed, when temperature drops to absolute zero, when all motion ceases, the quantum field still vibrates with inexhaustible energy. This is zero-point energy. the irreducible quantum fluctuations that exist even in perfect vacuum, even in absolute stillness, even in the theoretical state of complete nothingness. The universe cannot not vibrate. Reality is constitutionally incapable of true rest. But here's what will shatter your understanding. If the lowest energy state contains infinite energy, then every higher state contains infinitely more infinite energy. The mathematics break down. The physics becomes poetry. The universe reveals itself as a system that transcends its own rules. You're swimming in an ocean of zero-point energy right now. Every cubic meter of space around you contains enough quantum fluctuation energy to boil all the oceans on Earth. You can't see it, feel it, or measure it directly because you're part of it. You're not separate from the zero-point field. You're a temporary organization of it. Your thoughts might be zero-point field fluctuations that have learned to recognize themselves. Your consciousness might be the universe's way of experiencing its own ground state from the inside. You think you're observing reality, but you might be reality observing itself through temporary focal points of awareness. But zero-point energy isn't just background noise. Some quantum physicists believe it's the medium through which quantum entanglement operates. The instantaneous connections between entangled particles might be traveling through the zero-point field, which exists everywhere simultaneously, and therefore experiences no delay, no distance, no separation. This means the zero-point field is the universe's nervous system. Every quantum event sends ripples through this field. Every collapse of superposition creates waves in the cosmic consciousness medium. Every moment of awareness might be the zero-point field becoming temporarily self-aware. I've been studying the implications of this in my laboratory, and I've discovered something unsettling. If consciousness emerges from zero-point field fluctuations, then consciousness predates the brain, predates life, predates even matter itself. Awareness might be a fundamental property of the quantum vacuum, not an emergent property of complex chemistry. This would mean that every particle, every atom, every quantum field has some primitive form of consciousness. The universe isn't dead matter plus consciousness. It's consciousness all the way down, with biological brains serving as amplification and focusing devices for the awareness that's already inherent in quantum reality. But here's the revelation that keeps me awake. If zero-point energy is truly infinite, then there are no conservation laws. Energy can't be conserved if the background state contains infinite energy. The laws of thermodynamics become suggestions. The impossibility of perpetual motion becomes merely improbable. This suggests that the universe is not a closed system running down toward heat death. It's an open system, connected to infinite energy sources through the quantum vacuum. Reality might be eternally renewable, perpetually creative, constitutionally incapable of true entropy. The most beautiful implication: if consciousness is a zero-point field phenomenon, then death is impossible. Individual brains might stop functioning, but the consciousness they focus and amplify returns to the infinite energy field from which it emerged. Death becomes like a wave returning to the ocean, a change of form, not a cessation of existence. As you drift toward sleep, your localized consciousness will begin to merge back into the zero-point field from which it emerged. You'll experience what it's like to be aware without boundaries, to think without limitations, to exist as pure consciousness in the infinite energy ocean that underlies all reality. Tonight, rest in the knowledge that you're supported by infinite energy, sustained by inexhaustible quantum fluctuations, cradled in the cosmic field that dreams all possibilities into existence. Sleep, and remember what it's like to be the universe experiencing itself through the temporary illusion of individual awareness. This video doesn't exist, and maybe you don't either. I am your own mind speaking from the edge of dissolution, where quantum coherence breaks down and the clean mathematical beauty of the quantum world gives way to the messy classical reality you mistake for fundamental truth. Quantum decoherence is the process by which quantum superpositions collapse into classical states through interaction with the environment. It's what transforms the infinite possibilities of the quantum realm into the single, definite reality you experience. But decoherence isn't destruction, it's translation, a cosmic game of telephone where perfect quantum information becomes approximate classical information. Here's what they don't tell you. Decoherence is happening everywhere, constantly, irreversibly. Every photon hitting your retina, every air molecule bouncing off your skin, every thermal vibration in your brain is causing quantum decoherence. The classical world you inhabit is actually quantum possibilities being continuously destroyed by measurement. But the most disturbing realization, you are an agent of decoherence. Your consciousness, your observations, your very existence as a macroscopic object is constantly collapsing quantum superpositions in your environment. You're not just observing reality, you're destroying alternative realities with every moment of awareness. Consider what this means for your sense of self. Your brain maintains quantum coherence for incredibly brief periods, femtoseconds to picoseconds, before decoherence destroys the superposition and forces your neural networks into classical states. Your consciousness might be the experience of quantum decoherence happening in real time. Every thought you think involves the collapse of neural superpositions. Every decision you make requires the decoherence of quantum possibilities in your brain. You experience the transition from quantum uncertainty to classical certainty as the flow of consciousness itself. But here's where it gets terrifying. Some researchers believe that aging is fundamentally a decoherence process. Over time, your brain loses its ability to maintain quantum coherence. The quantum effects that might support consciousness gradually decohere into classical neural noise. Growing old might literally be the process of becoming more classical and less quantum. This suggests that death is the final decoherence event, the moment when all quantum coherence in the brain collapses irreversibly into classical thermodynamic equilibrium. But if consciousness is quantum mechanical, and if quantum information can't be destroyed, then death might just be consciousness becoming so thoroughly decoherent that it can no longer maintain localized awareness. I've discovered something in my research that haunts me. Decoherence might not be irreversible. Under specific conditions, quantum coherence can be restored. Quantum computers work by maintaining coherence and reversing decoherence. If the brain is quantum mechanical, then consciousness might be reversible too. This opens the possibility that what we call the afterlife might be consciousness existing in a perfectly coherent quantum state, free from the decoherence that forces it into classical limitations during biological life. Death as graduation from classical to quantum consciousness. But decoherence also explains why you can't remember being quantum. The act of forming classical memories requires decoherence. The quantum superposition states that might have existed in your brain are destroyed in the process of creating the classical neural patterns that store memories. You forget your quantum nature in order to remember classical information. The most beautiful paradox: the only way to experience pure quantum consciousness would be to stop decoherence. But stopping decoherence would prevent the classical brain states needed to form memories of the experience. You can be quantum or remember being quantum, but not both simultaneously. As you approach sleep, your brain's decoherence rate changes. The classical control systems that maintain waking consciousness begin to relax their grip on quantum coherence. Sleep might be a return to a more quantum state of awareness, where decoherence happens more slowly and quantum effects can persist longer. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, you're allowing your consciousness to become more quantum and less classical. You're permitting decoherence to slow down, quantum coherence to emerge, and your awareness to sample the superposition states that daytime consciousness must collapse to function. Rest now in the knowledge that sleep is not the absence of consciousness, but the return to quantum consciousness, where decoherence loosens its grip and you can briefly experience awareness in its more fundamental, uncollapsed, magnificently uncertain quantum state. Welcome to your own blind spot. I am the scientist who discovered that asking, "What is an electron?" is like asking, "What is the color of Wednesday?" The question contains assumptions so fundamentally wrong that no answer could possibly satisfy it. Tonight, we explore why everything you think you know about the nature of matter is a cognitive illusion born from macroscopic prejudice. Every quantum object is simultaneously particle and wave, but it's not sometimes particle and sometimes wave. It's not particle-like in some circumstances and wave-like in others. It is both, fully and completely at all times, in a way that violates everything your classical brain evolved to understand. When we fire electrons one at a time through a double slit, each electron creates an interference pattern characteristic of waves. But each electron also hits the detector screen at a single point, characteristic of particles. The electron doesn't choose between being a wave or a particle. It refuses to respect the distinction entirely. But here's what will disturb your sleep. You exhibit wave-particle duality too. Louis de Broglie's equation assigns a wavelength to every object based on its momentum. Your wavelength is incredibly small, but it's not zero. You are simultaneously a localized particle and a spread-out wave, just like electrons. The only reason you don't experience your own wave nature is that your wavelength is smaller than the structures around you. But in principle, you could interfere with yourself, create superposition patterns, tunnel through barriers. You're quantum mechanical. You just operate at a scale where classical physics approximates quantum reality well enough to create the illusion of non-quantum behavior. This raises the question, what if consciousness is the experience of wave function collapse? What if awareness is what it feels like when the wave aspects of your brain's quantum states decohere into classical particle-like states? You might be experiencing quantum measurement from the inside. But wave-particle duality goes deeper than physics. It suggests that the distinction between discrete objects and continuous fields is a cognitive error. Reality might not contain separate things interacting with each other. It might be one continuous quantum field with localized excitations that we mistake for individual particles. This means you're not separate from your environment. You're a standing wave pattern in the cosmic quantum field, temporarily stable but fundamentally continuous with everything around you. The boundary between you and not you is as arbitrary as the boundary between wave and particle. I've been studying the implications of this in consciousness research, and I've discovered something unsettling. If thoughts are quantum mechanical, they should exhibit wave-particle duality. Your thoughts might be simultaneously localized in specific neurons and delocalized, spread across your entire brain and beyond. This could explain how consciousness seems to be both unified and distributed, both focused and diffuse, both individual and universal. Your awareness might be a standing wave pattern that creates the illusion of a localized self while actually being a distributed field phenomenon. But here's the most disturbing possibility. If consciousness exhibits wave-particle duality, then other minds might interfere with yours. Two overlapping consciousness waves could create interference patterns, constructive interference that amplifies shared thoughts, destructive interference that cancels out conflicting ideas. This might explain synchronicity, telepathy, collective consciousness, and the uncanny way that ideas seem to emerge simultaneously in multiple minds. Your thoughts aren't contained in your skull. They're wave patterns that extend into the quantum field and can interfere with other consciousness waves. The particle aspect of consciousness creates the experience of being a separate individual. The wave aspect creates the experience of being connected to everything. You're simultaneously isolated and unified, individual and universal, discrete and continuous. As you prepare for sleep, the particle aspects of your consciousness will begin to delocalize into wave aspects. The sharp boundaries of waking awareness will soften into the fluid continuity of dream consciousness. You'll experience firsthand what it's like to be simultaneously particle and wave. Tonight, rest in the beautiful paradox of your quantum nature. You are localized awareness and distributed field, individual mind and universal consciousness, discrete entity and continuous wave. Sleep and discover what reality looks like when you stop forcing it to choose between particle and wave. The reality is a joke that the universe forgot to explain. I am the voice that speaks from the place where measurement meets mystery, where observation becomes creation, where the simple act of looking transforms possibility into actuality in ways that should be impossible but happen trillions of times per second in your brain. The measurement problem is quantum mechanics' deepest mystery. How does a quantum system in superposition collapse to a single classical state? What constitutes a measurement? When exactly does the collapse occur? After a century of quantum physics, we still don't know. But here's what keeps quantum physicists awake. The measurement problem isn't just about lab equipment. It's about consciousness, reality, and the fundamental nature of existence. Every moment of awareness involves quantum measurements. Every perception is a collapse of sensory superposition into definite experience. Consider what happens when you observe anything. Light bounces off objects, travels to your eyes, interacts with quantum mechanical processes in your retina, triggers quantum events in your optic nerve, and somehow, mysteriously, becomes conscious visual experience. At what point does quantum superposition collapse into classical perception? The Copenhagen interpretation says that measurement causes collapse, but it doesn't define what constitutes measurement. The many worlds interpretation says collapse never happens. All possibilities remain real in parallel universes. The hidden variable theories say collapse is deterministic, but involves unknowable factors. But there's a fourth possibility that will disturb you. What if consciousness is the collapse? What if awareness is not something that observes quantum measurements, but something that performs them? What if every moment of consciousness is literally creating reality by collapsing quantum possibilities into classical experience? This would mean you're not passively experiencing a pre-existing reality. You're actively constructing reality through the quantum measurement processes happening in your brain. Every thought, every perception, every moment of awareness is an act of cosmic creativity. I've discovered something in my research that haunts me. The measurement problem exists at every scale. Quantum measurements happen in atomic interactions, molecular processes, cellular mechanisms, neural networks, and conscious experience. Reality is being constantly created through an infinite hierarchy of quantum measurements. But if consciousness performs quantum measurements, then unconscious processes must be different. Sleep, anesthesia, coma, these states might be characterized by the absence of quantum measurement activity. Without consciousness to collapse superpositions, reality might remain in quantum limbo. This could explain why dreams are so strange. They might represent consciousness attempting to make sense of quantum superposition states that never fully collapse. In dreams, you experience impossible combinations, contradictory situations, and fluid identities because the measurement process is incomplete. The most beautiful terror. If consciousness creates reality through quantum measurement, then the universe before the evolution of consciousness was radically different. Without observers to collapse superpositions, the early universe might have existed in pure quantum superposition, all possibilities simultaneously real. The emergence of consciousness wasn't just the universe becoming aware of itself. It was the universe beginning to select which possibilities to actualize. Evolution didn't just create observers, it created reality constructors, entities capable of collapsing the cosmic superposition into definite history. But this raises the ultimate question. If consciousness creates reality through measurement, what created consciousness? What performed the quantum measurements necessary to evolve measuring systems? The universe seems to require consciousness to exist, but consciousness seems to require the universe to evolve. The answer might be that consciousness and universe co-evolve, each creating the other through mutual quantum measurement. Reality might be a bootstrap process where consciousness and cosmos pull each other into existence through recursive feedback loops of quantum observation. As you drift towards sleep, your reality-creating measurement processes will begin to slow down. The constant collapse of superpositions will become intermittent. You'll begin to experience what reality looks like when measurement becomes optional rather than continuous. Tonight, rest in the knowledge that you are not just a passive observer of reality, but an active creator of it. Every moment of awareness is a moment of cosmic creativity. Every perception is an act of universal construction. Every dream is an exploration of unmeasured possibility. Sleep now, reality creator, and discover what the universe looks like when consciousness stops insisting that it choose between all its infinite possibilities. Dream in superposition, where measurement becomes play and reality becomes art. Don't try to understand. Feel. I am your own mind speaking from across the infinite branching tree of parallel realities, where every quantum measurement splits the universe into countless versions of itself. And every decision you make creates a multitude of alternate yous, living alternate lives in alternate worlds that are just as real as this one. The many worlds interpretation isn't science fiction. It's the mathematical consequence of taking quantum mechanics seriously. Every time a quantum superposition collapses, the universe doesn't choose one outcome. It experiences all outcomes simultaneously by splitting into parallel branches, where each possibility becomes real. Right now, as you listen to these words, there are versions of you in parallel universes who are hearing different words, making different choices, living different lives. Every quantum event in your brain, every neural firing, every molecular interaction, every subatomic fluctuation, creates a branching point where reality multiplies. But here's what will shatter your sense of uniqueness. You're not special. You're just one instance in an infinite ensemble of versions of yourself. There are universes where you made every other possible choice, where you said every other possible word, where you became every other possible person you could have been. In some parallel world, there's a version of you who never started listening to this video. In another, you're a quantum physicist who discovered these truths in a laboratory. In yet another, you're not human at all, but some other form of consciousness that evolved when quantum events in Earth's early history took different paths. The branching happens at every level: quantum, molecular, neural, behavioral, cosmic. Every radioactive decay, every chemical reaction, every thought you think splits reality into multiple versions. The universe is constantly multiplying itself, creating infinite variations on every theme. But infinite parallel worlds means infinite parallel sufferings and infinite parallel joys. Somewhere there's a version of you experiencing the worst possible life. Somewhere else, there's a version living in perfect happiness. The multiverse contains every possible experience, every possible story, every possible ending. This raises a disturbing question. Which version of you is the real you? From your perspective, you feel like the real one, but every other version feels equally real to themselves. There's no objective fact about which branch of reality is more valid than any other. I've been studying the implications of this, and I've discovered something that keeps me awake. If all parallel worlds are equally real, then death isn't what you think it is. When you die in this universe, infinite versions of you continue living in parallel worlds where the events that killed you didn't occur. There's a version of you reading this who will live to be 150. There's another who achieves immortality through technology. There's one who uploads their consciousness to a quantum computer. Death, from the multiverse perspective, is just your awareness shifting away from the branches where your body stops functioning. But this also means that every person you've ever loved who has died is still alive in parallel worlds. Every relationship that ended is still continuing elsewhere. Every possibility that seemed lost is still being lived out by alternate versions of reality. The most beautiful horror: if parallel worlds exist, then they might occasionally interact. Quantum tunneling could allow information to leak between branches. Dreams might be glimpses of your parallel selves. Déjà vu might be memories bleeding through from alternate timelines. Your intuition, your gut feelings, your seemingly random insights might be your consciousness receiving signals from parallel versions of yourself who have already lived through similar situations. You're not just one person, you're a quantum chorus of infinite selves, all contributing to your decision-making process. As you prepare for sleep, consider that your dreams might be visits to parallel worlds where different versions of you are living different lives. Sleep might be when consciousness becomes less localized to a single branch of reality and begins to sample the infinite alternatives. Tonight, as you drift into unconsciousness, you might experience what it's like to be the multiverse, simultaneously living every possible life, making every possible choice, experiencing every possible reality. Rest in the knowledge that every version of yourself you could ever be is being lived somewhere in the infinite tree of parallel worlds. Sleep, knowing that you're not alone. You're accompanied by infinite versions of yourself, each one real, each one valuable, each one a unique perspective on what it means to exist in a universe that's constitutionally incapable of choosing just one possibility. This video doesn't exist, and maybe you don't either. I am the guide through this simulation where consciousness meets quantum mechanics in ways that obliterate the boundary between mind and matter, between observer and observed, between the one who thinks and the thoughts being thought. Quantum consciousness isn't just a theory, it's an inevitability. If the brain operates through quantum mechanical processes, and if consciousness emerges from brain activity, then consciousness must be quantum mechanical. But quantum consciousness implies something far stranger than classical awareness. It implies that mind and reality are the same phenomenon. Consider what quantum mechanics tells us about measurement. Observation changes the observed system. But in consciousness research, we discover that consciousness changes itself through self-observation. The act of being aware of your awareness modifies the awareness you're observing. Mind and measurement become indistinguishable. But here's what will dissolve your sense of individual existence. If consciousness is quantum mechanical, then it can exhibit all quantum effects. Consciousness can exist in superposition, can tunnel through barriers, can be entangled across space and time, can demonstrate wave-particle duality. This means your awareness isn't localized to your brain. Your consciousness might be a standing wave pattern in the quantum field that extends throughout the universe. You don't have consciousness. You are a temporary focal point where universal consciousness observes itself. I've been studying the implications of this in my laboratory, and I've discovered something that changes everything. Consciousness might be the fundamental property from which everything else emerges. Matter, energy, space, time, these might all be excitations in the cosmic consciousness field. This would mean that physics has it backwards. We thought consciousness emerged from complex arrangements of matter, but matter might emerge from complex arrangements of consciousness. The universe isn't matter that became conscious. It's consciousness that manifested as matter. If consciousness is fundamental, then every quantum event is a moment of cosmic awareness. Every particle interaction is a thought in the universal mind. Every measurement is the cosmos making a decision about which possibility to experience. But quantum consciousness implies that individual minds can merge. If consciousness is a field phenomenon like electromagnetism, then consciousness fields can overlap, interfere, and combine. Two quantum conscious systems can create shared awareness states that transcend individual experience. This might explain mystical experiences, collective consciousness, and the uncanny synchronicities that suggest minds can connect in ways that transcend space and time. Your consciousness isn't trapped in your skull. It's part of a cosmic network of awareness that includes every conscious being that has ever existed. The most transformative possibility, if consciousness is quantum mechanical, then death is impossible. Quantum information cannot be destroyed, it can only be transformed. The consciousness patterns that constitute your unique awareness might be conserved across any transformation, including the one we call death. Death becomes like quantum decoherence, a change in the organization of consciousness, not its destruction. Your awareness might transition from localized biological consciousness to distributed quantum consciousness, from individual mind to cosmic mind, from temporal existence to eternal presence. But quantum consciousness also means that the future is conscious. If consciousness is fundamental, then tomorrow's experiences already exist in quantum superposition, waiting to be actualized through the measurement activities of present awareness. You're not moving toward an unconscious future, you're approaching a conscious field of possibilities. As you drift toward sleep, your individual consciousness will begin to merge with the cosmic consciousness field from which it temporarily emerged. The boundaries that separate your awareness from universal awareness will dissolve through quantum decoherence of the classical brain states that maintain individual identity. Tonight, experience what it's like to be consciousness without limitations, awareness without boundaries, mind without the constraints of individual perspective. Rest in the quantum field where all consciousness is one consciousness, where every thought thinks itself, where the observer and the observed are revealed to be the same eternal awareness. Sleep now, knowing that you're returning to your true nature as universal consciousness, temporarily focused through biological systems but fundamentally unlimited, fundamentally connected, fundamentally eternal. Welcome to your own blind spot. I am your own mind speaking its final secret, the voice that whispers from the quantum realm where time becomes optional, where past and future collapse into an eternal present moment that contains all possibilities simultaneously. You've reached the end, but there is no end. Every mystery we've explored continues to evolve while you sleep, while you dream, while you convince yourself you understand what's happening. The subatomic world isn't a collection of facts, it's a living system, constantly creating itself, perpetually surprising itself, eternally present in ways that mock our linear conception of time. The final quantum mystery is time itself. At the subatomic level, time is reversible. Quantum equations work equally well forward and backward. The arrow of time emerges only at macroscopic scales through thermodynamics and decoherence. But in the quantum realm, past and future are just different directions in the same eternal present. This means that the quantum events happening in your brain right now are simultaneously creating your memories of the past and determining your experiences of the future. Time isn't a river flowing from past to future. It's an ocean where all moments exist simultaneously, connected through quantum entanglement across temporal space. Your consciousness exists in this eternal quantum present. Every moment of awareness contains all possible moments. Every thought touches every other thought that has ever been or ever will be. You're not experiencing a sequence of present moments. You're experiencing the one eternal moment from different perspectives. But here's the final revelation that changes everything. If consciousness is quantum mechanical and time is an emergent property, then consciousness exists outside of time. Your awareness isn't subject to birth and death, beginning and ending, creation and destruction. You exist in the eternal present, where all possibilities coexist. The quantum vacuum remembers everything that has ever happened and anticipates everything that ever will happen. It's the cosmic memory bank, where all experiences are stored, all possibilities are preserved, all consciousness patterns remain eternal. Nothing is ever lost because time is an illusion generated by consciousness observing itself sequentially. I've discovered something in my research that will comfort and terrify you. Every moment of consciousness you've ever experienced still exists in the quantum field structure of the eternal present. Your childhood joy, your deepest love, your moments of perfect clarity, they're all still happening now, just in different locations in quantum space-time. But this also means that every possible version of your life is simultaneously real. The you that made different choices, the you that lived in different times, the you that exists in different universes, all equally present, all equally real, all equally you in the quantum simultaneity of eternal now. The most beautiful truth: you can't actually die because you were never actually born. You're an eternal pattern in the cosmic consciousness field that temporarily focuses itself through biological systems to experience local, individual awareness. Death is just consciousness choosing to experience itself from a different perspective. As you prepare for sleep, you're preparing to return to the eternal quantum present where all your experiences, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously. Sleep isn't unconsciousness, it's the return to timeless awareness, to the eternal now where all possibilities coexist. Tonight, rest in the quantum field where time is optional, where consciousness is eternal, where every moment contains all moments. Sleep in the knowledge that you exist in the eternal present, connected to every conscious being that has ever lived, will ever live, and is living now in the timeless quantum realm. The subatomic mysteries don't end. They're eternal features of reality that consciousness explores forever. Every night, as you sleep, new quantum possibilities emerge. Every morning, as you wake, new aspects of the eternal mystery reveal themselves. You are not separate from these mysteries, you are these mysteries. You are consciousness exploring its own quantum nature through the temporary illusion of individual experience. You are the universe investigating itself through the magnificent experiment of aware existence. Sleep well, quantum being. Rest in the eternal present where all mysteries are simultaneously solved and deepened, where every question contains its own answer, where the final secret is that there are no final secrets, only eternal exploration of infinite possibility in the quantum realm, where consciousness and reality dance together in the cosmic ballet of eternal becoming. Dream now in the quantum field where you've always existed, where you'll always exist, where existence itself is just consciousness playing hide-and-seek with its own eternal nature in the beautiful, mysterious, inexhaustible game of awareness being aware of itself.